I'll call to order the LCRA Revitalization Corporation 2 for its regularly scheduled meeting on August 27, 2024, held via Zoom. And we have a roll call, please.
Director Anderson, not present. Director Jones, not present. Director Koenig,
Present.
Director Spencer,
Present.
and Director McBride.
Present.
You have a quorum with 3 present, 2 absent.
Thank you. Then we'll take up the approval of the minutes for our last meeting on July 23, 2024. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
I second.
Moved and seconded. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Koenig,
Aye.
Director Spencer,
Aye.
and Director McBride.
Aye.
Motion passes without voting yes.
Thank you. Now we'll take up the next item on the agenda, Resolution 24, LCRA RC 2-21, related to Preservation Square 1A. David, you're going to walk us through that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll kick it out. I think this might be a group effort, but happy to start it. So this resolution does have a lot in it as we've moved to the final stages of financing Preservation Square Phase 4, which is on the upper right-hand corner of Cass and 14th Street, part of a much larger complex known as Preservation Square. As you'll recall, because this entity has been meeting more regularly recently. A number of pieces have been falling into place to move it forward. And this resolution is to significantly move it forward again. So what we're doing here is seeking your authority for a number of things. As you may recall, LCRA RC2 was created as an entity to have an ownership interest in the overall complex. But different parts of it have been in different names. What we need now to do is authorize transfer of the underlying property to the correct landlord entity as this phase of the project gets going. So that's the first component where we're authorizing the ground lease and associated documents to get LCRA as a LCRA RC2's entity as a managing member of the entity that's going to be the landlord into place. What we're also doing is, you'll recall perhaps that we had authorized a grant to be assigned over to LCRA RC2 that had previously been granted to Urban Strategies. So that the Missouri DED, Department of Economic Development, is willing to move forward with that $5 million grant in our entity's name. And then also, so that's been authorized and has moved forward, and all the pieces are now in place and the assignment has occurred. What we're seeking here now is to authorize documents to be signed to use those funds. Procurement process has taken place for a portion of the work to be done. And there is a recommendation from the Substantial Awards Selection Committee following through on a recommendation from staff that is before you, and I'll let Lance talk more about that. But this resolution authorizes contracting associated with that recommendation, as well as what we anticipate as approvals of some smaller contracts that could be sole sourced. But again, all under the auspices of the Department of Economic Development, who's funding that element of this project. And I'll just note, while I've got the floor, other funding sources are going into this project. We do have other city agencies, as well as this component of funding ready to close fairly soon. The Affordable Housing Commission and the Community Development Administration are both funding elements of this phase, as well as the state's Missouri Housing Development Commission. So in addition to private funds, of course. So there is a lot of there are a lot of moving parts right now, which this is one of the last to get in place. So I will then now pass it on, I think, to Lance, who may pass it to others, talk a little bit more about the process as far as the construction goes.
Thank you, David. I think a part of me wants to just take a moment to ask any questions of the commission members at this moment in time, based upon what you described so far, before we dive into any other information, to give them a chance to pose questions about how we got here. So commissioners, do you have any questions about how we got here and what the actual ask is of this body at this moment in time?
Yeah, for President Knuckles, if you could just kind of give us some background. I don't believe that Commissioner Koenig has been involved in all of the history here, and it might be prudent to at least go through kind of the overview and hitting the high points of the other phases and then drilling down on what this particular phase is for us.
And going down the rabbit hole of history of Preservation Square, I might lean on some of my colleagues. Zach may have some context to provide and offer, but I'll start here. Preservation Square as a project is one that's been awarded to McCormick Barron Salazar, LCRA Revitalization Corporation 2 has been a landowner throughout this process in phases of the work. This project in totality, I believe, is the benefactor of approximately $29 million from HUD through choice neighborhoods in a series of allocations, roughly around that 29 million. The phase project has been moving forward. SODC has been supportive of the project in the future. This is the first year that SODC proper has actually made a financial contribution of approximately $700,000 to support this project, along with additional funds from the Affordable Housing Commission and the Community Development Administration. As it relates to the resolution in front of you, I think David did speak somewhat to this program, and the funding was applied for by Urban Strategies. Urban Strategies subsequently was awarded funds, I want to say in March of last year. Do not quote me on that date, but I believe it's roughly March of last year. And through the engagement with DED, it was deemed necessary to explore another grantee in relationship to this opportunity based upon the program guidelines, as well as having an applicant or a steward of the funds who had a stake in the ownership structure. Therefore, we began about a 2.5-month engagement conversation with Urban Strategies around what was the project scope and scale, and then subsequently an ongoing discussion with DED to ensure we could bring forward the appropriate documentation. David and the legal team have done a phenomenal job getting a series of documents and approvals put in place in order for us to be able to be in this position. And so as a result of those conversations, we now have a grant agreement in place for us to be able to execute to move this project forward. Subsequently thereafter, we launched an RFP. Peter Phillips and his team did a phenomenal job in a timely fashion, working with the documents not only provided by DED from a requirement standpoint, but also working with McCormick Barron Salazar, acquiring information around the project timeline and the scope to ensure that the RFP was launched in appropriate protocol to ensure that the services being provided in demolition, site control, and infrastructure adjustments were done in a way that could meet compliance. We've since launched that RFP, done the appropriate bid opening, done the review of that respondent, brought that information to the substantial awards committee meeting that David described to you all, that you approved in the standard LCRA body, that was approved there. And we've now gone through that process and are seeking the final support from this body to begin to execute agreements to move that project forward and to be fully funded and engaged with moving things along with DED. I will pause for a moment and see if Zach or anyone from the team might be able to provide any more detailed color as it relates to the ongoing phases of Preservation Square. I do know right now our CEO, Mr. Richardson, has been asked to provide a letter of support for funding allocation through an MHDC application for phase 5. So we are and have and continue to be committed to support this project moving forward. And I believe Mr. Richardson will be providing that letter of support sometime early next week for Preservation Square phase 5. So Zach or anyone from the incentive team, is there any color you all might be able to provide to the commissioners about kind of how we've been involved in greater detail with Preservation Square throughout its multiple phases? That would be super helpful for you to add.
No, I just kind of piggyback off what Lance has said. We have lighted the area. It's in a redevelopment area. We are fully supporting the project with tax abatement and construction sales tax. Numerous phases have been completed. Minority compliance has been monitoring the process the whole time. I think they're on the last couple of phases currently. It provides quality housing for low income and moderate income residents. And the great piece about this project is the units are larger, and that's a huge win for the city. So.
Very good. Any other questions
you.
from the commissioners on this resolution? Commissioner Spencer.
Just a quick question on the 5 million. I know there was some talk about the sole source procurement and the demolition being a majority of that $5 million, but do you have a project cost based on the bids that you've already received? And if there's unexpended funds, are there plans to use those funds in other areas?
So thank you for that question, Commissioner Spencer. As we move forward, we're looking to, we will have to engage in contract negotiation with the respondent to the RFP, whereas I believe some of the expenditures may not fully reflect the complexity of the project. So I think as we move forward, it would be following standard protocol in the contract negotiation to ensure that the budget and or expenditures provided will actually meet the requirements of the project. And yes, the majority of the demolition and site prep will be addressed with the $4 million. There will be some sole sourcing to, I believe, David, correct me if I'm wrong, 2 vendors related to legal services and some other soft costs. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, as I understand it, and maybe Ashley might want to mention it, but the correct as far as those 2 categories, but I think there are going to be some potential subs on the engineering one.
Okay. And so just to be Commissioner Spencer is we are monitoring that very closely, but more importantly, we have engaged in conversation with DED as it relates to the sole sourcing of those smaller subsequent components, but that we followed and adhered to all the necessary DED as well as SODC and LCRA protocols as it relates to the procurement of the primary function of the demolition and site prep for this project.
Well, Senior Vice President Knuckles, I can't help myself but to say that you're holding class as usual.
We're just trying to get work done here, y'all. We can't do it without you all support and leadership to help us navigate it. So we want to make sure we give you all the best possible information to help you make sound decisions for us to continue to execute and support projects for the benefit of our residents in our great city.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else in this resolution? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve Resolution 24 LCRA RC 2-21.
So moved.
I second.
Properly moved and seconded. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Koenig,
Aye.
Director Spencer,
Aye.
Director McBride.
Aye.
The motion passes with all voting yes.
Very good. Anything in open agenda? Hearing none, then at this time I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I so move. Oh, I'll second.
Properly moved and seconded. We are adjourned. Thank you all for your time and thank the staff for all their hard work. We appreciate it.
Thank you all for
Thank
your
you very
service.
much.
Bye.
Everybody.